Well, the oral transmission as well as today's oral transmission, I'll give you two together.
Nivrzewe tambi daga yeki ramjin bombo da terje lokshir deva ne dan kura tanam nyangan de nyamba ne tor tokshirta daga cheda mali sherep ji chada de sem chena cheda sherep zerdan je tuba mana terterlo se shanjib tablate kuan phagban koram nyangan de man ger kate sanje khamme na dugla kyor manjer jan nyangan de lan do ba da donir mo ba me pranjer Chatam Yan Debi de Debati Dungar Joyum Toman the Yulena Kayan Jira Demet Taglad Mip Shero Jamsu Chivjan Home Yondan Mazone Yermet Yondan Tambe Ngo Nipshir Marmejan Churkur Jarva Yishi Dan Tuje Kamna Dio Shira Notan Ranchan Chi Jamso Tanam Sombra Tana Jemilanam Monshi Dan Yishi Jametania Dan Navimeshir Marmei Snandang, Drum Chu, Drum Do, Chu, Chum Song Jan, Sur Tien Pal, Su Tien Pal, Zoxan Ji, Tejin Yen Jigba Le, Tenya the Zigbe Simpson La, Tenya Zigbe Simpson La, Jerry Nyambo and Doftanto. So Kio Shinjalo, Dembantonga Dobate, Dijan Soba Jirdajan, Chinjamal of Trumit Net, Matak Tabadan, Shandernam the Corumjan, Simpson Shanjus and Wadan, Dijan Soba Jijoto, Nila Sobai, and the chicken of Dibai, Kamna Nirkur. Some dog the Mansum Gin of Tamba, Yan, Mansum Gin of Tamba, Chester Tomit Downichan, Namkat of the Jison, Simpson Ramjan, Jimmy Division Donna Gundren, Dijir Jimson Nibadan, Yondam Tatik Cabate, Zikir Namba Mambatan, Varmam Chola Namka, Jen and Nibal over Tandan B, Yondan Ramjan, Nirdan of Shira, Chester Narjan Sheet Division, Girame B. Chunyato.
We'll continue with the Uttara Tantra Shastra, and tomorrow is the Analects of Confucius. Will be the first class. I'm not sure if it's going to be easy to give a teaching on Analects of Confucius. I am not so sure about it. I know something about the teachings of Confucius. I don't know some of it. I know some of it. I've taught for 30 years. I think in terms of the framework, I know lots of the some of the logics or how to then give teaching in terms of then giving classes. I think I'll be okay because I've been teaching for 30 years. So I am confident and not so arrogant, so to speak. In fact, there are about over 300 commentaries on the Analects of Confucius. It is quite a meaningful text to study. Therefore, I really wish to then study together with you. To compose a teaching and to give a teaching on other people's texts would be, in fact, quite different. And maybe to give a teaching this time, which is the first time, if it works for you, that would be wonderful. If it doesn't, maybe we'll try it again next time. I've given teachings before on how to be a good student, as well as the classics on filial piety. I think lots of the traditional classics, it does contain lots of meaningful contents. But whatever class you're listening to, I encourage you to start and end it well if you were to start it. The content is the same, so there's really not much of the meaning to give it up halfway through. Studying is not something that makes you suffering. In fact, the studying could bring you lots of benefits. And the value of teaching cannot be replaced by other things. Therefore, I really think that we should be quite curious in terms of seeking for knowledge. During seeking for the worldly knowledge could also maybe give you rise to some insights of the supermundane teachings as well. So that was the first thing I want to make announcement of. I am then going to teach the Analects of Confucius, and then later on I'll give teachings on Suragama Sutra. But you never really know if I'll be able to finish teaching any of the texts that I started teaching. For example, I think Vimalakirti Sutra will be able to finish it, but the other teachings are rather quite long, and not sure if I'll be able to finish teaching it. I'm not sure if you will then persist all the way till the end to finish well on studying it. If you watch the news, you know this world is quite turbulent, quite chaotic, and not so harmonious. In such kind of a special era, we should then keep our mind pure, which is very difficult. And it is also difficult to bring peace and harmony to the external phenomena, external environment as well. Therefore, we should cherish the opportunity when we still have it to study and listening to the Dharma, to contemplate and practice the Buddha Dharma. And I really hope that through such teaching, through such practice, then we will be able to bring peace to this world. And in order to bring peace and harmony to ourselves, to our mind, as well as external phenomena, external environment, I think it is quite crucial to supplicate to Padmasambhava. I was translating then Pontsog Rinpoche's teachings, where he said that wherever you are, Pontsog Rinpoche stated, wherever you are on the cliff or in any places, if you could chant the mantra of Padmasambhava with a beautiful voice and a beautiful rhythm, then any kind of sentient beings who hears such chanting, then they will eventually be able to attain the fruition of being reborn in Pure Land. As well as Lama Lodro, who is the Lama or Guru of Pontsog Rinpoche, as well as Patrul Rinpoche's Guru, they all said that before any kind of teaching, first of all, the most important is to then blow the conch, and then when people hear the conch, which is calling for the Dharma teaching, the practitioners and the students would then slowly walk to the shrine hall while chanting Padmasambhava mantra. And then on the way back to their home after the teaching, they would chant the Padmasambhava mantra as well. Before our class, in fact, we play the audio of Pontsog Rinpoche's chanting of Padmasambhava mantra, but I don't really see many people would chant it. But maybe it's because that our practitioners nowadays, they don't have right mindfulness. They love to then surf online with their cell phone or playing with their cell phone and chatting with others. When you get into a shrine hall, it should be very quiet and should be quite mindful. but I don't see that happening yet after many times of stressing it. Maybe the women's section is probably more noisy than the men. Maybe it's the problem of my ear, but before and after the class, I really encourage you to then chant the mantra and read the textbook that you should read. On one hand, I really think that people are then quite tamed by their cell phones to the extent that they're almost crazy about their cell phones. But nowadays, the cell phone provides so much information, and majority of them are junk information. They're not necessary. Therefore, I encourage you to put down your cell phone and then chant the Padmasambhava's mantra. Otherwise, lots of the times, people would just chant the mantra for 3 times and then that's it. They don't want to chant anymore at all. Similarly to the people who are engaging in other kind of daily activities, such as taking bus and train, any kind of a commute. If you could just silently chant to yourself the Padmasambhava mantra, then it would be quite beneficial to yourself, to your mind, as well as to the worldly. To any of the worldly chaos, it would be very beneficial to bring harmony to this world. That's on one aspect. That's of one aspect. On the other aspect is to make the aspiration to then finish whatever dharma you're studying without any interruptions. Therefore, today we'll chant the Padmasambhava mantra together right now. And I really encourage you in the next period of time, in order to dispel any obstacles, to chant at least 108 Padmasambhava mantra, at least 10,000 Padmasambhava mantra, as well as 100 to 200 times of the 8 manifestations of Padmasambhava mantra. And the prayer that we chant together would be, in fact, bring the synergy which could dispel obstacles for ourselves and for the world, which could dispel all these obstacles into space. So we should then supplicate one pointedly to Padmasambhava, to Wujin Guru Rinpoche. Padmasambhava, when he was at Mangye Dumang, and he said that if you were to chant and dedicate and supplicate to me, in fact, I had never left you. Therefore, with this sincerity, then let's chant together the Padmasambhava mantra.
Maum badrun garo pamma sardung 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 maum badrun garo pamma maum badrun garo pamma sardung 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 maum badrun garo pamma maum badrun garo pamma sardung maum badrun garo pamma sardung maum badrun garo pamma sardung maum badrun garo pamma Maum badrun garo pamma sardung 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 maum badrun garo
Now let's continue with the actual class of the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra. You should really attach great importance to this. Personally, I think to a lot of people, to have such an opportunity to listen to the Uttara Tantra Shastra is, in fact, quite worthy of you being quite joyful, because where you are, your education, or different kind of causes and conditions that you obtain, that you have, can barely lead you to see the Buddha nature, to understand what Buddha nature is. Many people nowadays in the world, they don't even understand of the previous and next lives. They do not understand such continuity of mind stream. Therefore, to have such an opportunity to listen to such a great Mahayana Sutra, it is quite precious. Many people had committed great misdeeds and never had such opportunity to listen to this sutra, to this text. And I think if you have such an opportunity to listen to this supreme teaching, you should really cherish it. Otherwise, it's such a pity to waste your life without knowing what Buddha nature is. And to lots of Buddhists, they in fact have not really set any firm foundation or had any right view about Buddhism yet. They are not so clear and so certain about what a Buddha nature is. And in such a way, being a Buddhist, that is also quite a pity. This time, during teaching and studying this text, I noticed that so many practitioners, so many sanghas are studying, are then debating and studying in group, which brings a lot of joy to me, because growing in such kind of environment, you have the opportunity to study this text. That's probably the best kind of, or the most beneficial and valuable gain of your life. In this text, there are so much profound teachings, and I think lots of the scholars want to understand what this text talks about. However, they cannot really understand the profound meaning of this Uttara Tantra Shastra. Even their students who study under them, the students abandon this Buddha nature thought completely. Why is that? It is because they only study and research from a scholastic point of view, but not and their scholarly study are not really combined with their studying and contemplation and personal practice. In such a way, then they won't gain any success from their research or from their practice. For Buddhists, some of them, they only have the inspiration or aspiration to have a better lifestyle, to attain the celestial being, celestial realm. And some only understand a little bit, and they only have faith, but not really truly understanding of what Mahayana teaching of emptiness, and therefore they then engage in merit accumulation blindly. And it's just a very small number of people who have the opportunity and who can have such kind of opportunity to study the profound meaning of Uttara Tantra Shastra, of what Buddha nature is. Therefore, I really hope that those of you who are listening to this teaching to focus and to then one-heartedly to study this text. Do not treat this class as something that you can brush off your shoulder or something that is very easy to understand. Rather, I really hope that you could engage in discussion groups, in deep contemplation, and then you will be able to have at least a glimpse of this Buddha nature is. In fact, after teaching each class, I feel really quite tired, but I still stay after class to listen to the after-class discussion group. And lots of people, they did a great work, and they did a great job. The other day, during the Vimalakirti Sutra class, I asked them to then at least have one opportunity to give the teaching to one. They should ask for one round of giving or presentation to others. And in such a way, it is then, in such a way, they plant a seed for giving teaching of this particular sutra and shastra. Because later on, you may have the opportunity to go to dark places and go to places that's then permeated with lack of wisdom or darkness of ignorance. And you may have such opportunity to go and teach them and to propagate the brightness of Dharma. So, in the future, we're going to hand down the torch of Dharma to the young generation. Therefore, while we're studying the Uttara Tantra Shastra, the Tathagata, then we should be very mindful of that. We should propagate the Dharma, and we have the responsibility to pass this light on. To me, whatever Dharma teaching I receive from whomever teacher that I listen to, I never ever interrupted my teaching and classes. And I really paid great attention to each sentence and each word they said. And therefore, whenever I'm teaching, I would remember what my gurus used to teach and how they used to say. Sometimes I remember very clearly, sometimes not so clearly. I used to write lots of notes from different classes. Maybe later on, if I have opportunity, I will then pile it up on my table. Maybe it will be even taller than me. Anyhow, whatever teaching you receive, whomsoever the teacher is, I really wish that you could focus wholeheartedly on the Dharma, and instead of then thinking, oh, this teacher or oh, that teacher is not good. Do not try to criticize your teacher. Do not use all your time to criticize the teacher. If you constantly criticize your teacher, how could you then inherit their merit and inherit the knowledge that they teach? Therefore, the attitude of listening to the Dharma is crucial. And when you have the opportunity to listen to the Dharma, you should have a mind of feeling cherished, because you never know if you will ever have such an opportunity again to study together in this Sangha. Do not feel so heartbroken at that time. You should then listen wholeheartedly when this opportunity is still here, when such an opportunity is still mature at this moment. So when such opportunity then dissipate, when the conditions dissipate, you won't feel so heartbroken that you didn't seize the opportunity and listen to the teaching. Last class, we've already covered the function, the cause, the fruition, and we talked about the merits. In fact, there are the 10 kinds of qualities of Buddha nature. We've already then covered the first 3. Nowadays, many people talk so much about Buddha nature. But what is Buddha nature? I think when it comes to explanation of Buddha nature, they really don't understand what it is. Therefore, when we have this opportunity to then study in depth of Buddha nature, I think it will really help you to understand what it is. The next one then talks about the manifestation, and it has 2 aspects. The first one talks about the short explanation of the reason. In the nature, the suchness is one, but in terms of then what it is, or the suchness, and who can attain suchness, it has 2 aspects. The first one then talks about, based on the manifestation of suchness, dividing into that of an ordinary being, and that of a noble one, and that of a perfect Buddha. We manifest in the form of ordinary beings. It's very difficult to say that you are an ordinary being or not. There are people who manifest in the way that they have great afflictions, but maybe they're the noble ones. However, you never really know, because there are people who are very good at pretending, just like the noble ones who've already realized the Buddha nature, and afterwards they cannot keep pretending anymore. They then seem to be ordinary beings again. So there's the ordinary beings, and there are the suchness of a noble one, that is that are the bodhisattvas from the 1st to 10th bhumi, and then there are the suchness of a perfect Buddha. He who sees suchness has explained the nature of the victor to be. They very then detailedly explained what the nature of the Buddha nature is. So the manifestation of suchness fully divides into 3 aspects. The first one is the suchness of an ordinary being that is impure, and the suchness of a noble one In fact, taking three different manifestations as a basis, then the omniscient one who directly sees suchness has explained the nature of victorious Tathagata. And in another word, the complete pure Dhammadhatu is a very clear way to those fortunate being who have suitable for the disciples. But the Tathagata has already then taught the truth of Buddha nature to the sentient beings who are the impure ones, and the noble ones who are partially impure and partially pure, and the perfect Buddha who are completely pure. From the nature aspect, in fact, there's no way to separate what a Buddha nature is. You cannot separate levels of Buddha nature into different parts or different aspects, but from the aspect of who possesses it, then there are differences. According to the Sutra of Vastness and Comprehensiveness, it says that Dharmata is like the ocean, not discriminating right or wrong. The Dharmata of ordinary being and enlightened ones is the same. No distinction of superior or inferior as long as the stain of the mind is removed. The realization of it can be achieved. It's easy as flipping your hand from the palm to the back of your hand. So the mind, whether it is from the manifestation aspect, how the ordinary ones or the noble ones or the Tathagatas, in fact, the compassionate Buddha has taught Buddha nature from the different aspects accordingly. Therefore, I really hope that you could understand what the Buddha nature is. In fact, it is quite vast, and later on we'll further explain what it is. It's very difficult to explain it in just short sentences. Sometimes when I go to different universities, lots of teachers require me to give teachings on the Buddha nature, including Xiamen University, Peking University, and lots of professors who studied for many years. In fact, I think their studies are really good. However, maybe when it comes to the belief aspect or the systematic studying and contemplation of the five treatises are still quite lacking. And because of that, they then mix the esoteric and exoteric teachings, as well as the first, the second, and third turning of the Dharma wheel of the Buddha. And since they mix all of them together, therefore their explanations are rather quite vague and mixed up. Therefore, I really hope that they could reconsider how to give teachings on those or studying on those. The next one, and then it says that it manifests as perverted view in ordinary beings as a reversal of those. They say in those who see the truth, and it manifests as it is in an unperverted way as a freedom from elaboration in the Tathagata. Sometimes over here it says that the ordinary beings they could born in as a human being, and once they die, maybe they will be reborn in hell realm. So that's ordinary beings, and they would then switch places to be reborn based on the wind of karma. For these kind of beings, they have the perverted view, the view of purity and bliss and permanence and self. Those views are perverted, as well as their mind or their thoughts. They constantly have this kind of mental formation of jealousy, anger, and so on. Those which those of which are then also perverted, as well as their then the perception are also are also perverted. However, for the bodhisattvas who are the noble ones, they in fact already have seen the truth. Their thoughts, their mind, and their view are not reversed at all, or not perverted at all. They can then see everything they can see everything, they can perceive the truth directly, and they can then also completely abandon all the two obscurations, the two veils, as well as the karma. So from the aspect of the kind of the three kinds of individuals, then they're different. But the nature of Buddha nature, there is nothing to be divided or to be then categorized as the ordinary beings or bodhisattvas or the Buddha. It's very difficult for the ordinary being to perceive Buddha nature directly through this teaching. Mipa Rinpoche often then cited from the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, where he said that where he then said that even though all beings cannot see the Buddha nature, the Bodhisattva at the level of 10 stages can see Buddha nature somewhat, just as they could see the light of the moon from different stages based on their distances. And the Tathagata sees the Buddha nature completely, just as the Buddha is then seeing the moonlight, the moon directly and the most clearly. In Buddha nature, there are 9 kinds of metaphors and 6 kinds of meanings and so on. All of those then points to the teachings of Buddha nature, and we should then try to cross-reference to different commentaries and different texts such as sutras and shastras, and then we can contemplate upon those so that at the end of the study we'll have a comprehensive understanding of this text. Whatever kind of teaching whatever kind of class you engage in, if you have such kind of attitude, such a kind of curiosity to study knowledge, then you'll be able to succeed in any kind of teachings. The previous masters, they often then cross-reference to all kinds of commentaries and texts, unlike some of us who then often forget their textbooks and forget their commentaries, and after studying certain texts, then they will just throw their books far away and never ever read it again. I think this kind of action is probably quote unquote the great Mahasiddhis behavior, because in this world the Mahasiddhis are quite rare. They don't even need to read any books or study, and then they already have the omniscience to understand, and they don't really have to engage in anything so thoroughly and study so much in detail. But since this is degenerated age, majority of us are of the capacity of ordinary being, of ordinary capacity, and we should then adapt the method of studying in depth. This is the most reliable method to this age and to majority of beings. Then the 5th one then talks about the faces. And the faces that has the 3 names, and through the 3 names it contains 6 topics. First of all, we will then study the 3 faces which has 3 names. What does that mean? At first it says that then unpurified, both unpurified and purified, and the utterly purified. Is explained in the light of three faces by means of three names, which means that Tathagata Garbha has three faces. The three faces are the impure, or rather are expressing their given order by names being Bodhisattva and Tathagata. So there are the three faces that's unpurified, and that's the ordinary beings, and there are the second phase that is both unpurified and purified, such as bodhisattvas still on the path of seeing and bodhisattvas on the path of practice. So for the bodhisattvas on the path of seeing, they still have not then purified themselves completely to be on the path of practice or any close to the stage of Buddhahood. And then the bodhisattvas of on the path of practice, they are still, although they purified some of the defilements from the path of seeing, but still they're not on completely purified like the Buddha. And then the utterly purified phase is like the Buddha's stage. So they, expressing their given order, they were given the name of being or ordinary being that are that would then correspond to unpurified, and bodhisattva correspond to unpurified and purified, and Tathagata corresponds to utterly purified. For those of you who are not really good at memorizing everything, at least then you can memorize some of the stanzas. I have never really memorized any. I have not memorized the whole text, but at least I memorized this one. I can still recite it now. Lots of the masters who then quoted from certain texts, this is one of them that is quoted very often. And when I first heard it, I thought this is such a wonderful verse, therefore I recited it. At that time, I was still very young. So the three faces has three names, corresponds to them according to Master An Hui's commentary, or Master Jian Yi, who only have one volume, where he said that where in the text, the commentary of Mahayana Dhammadhatu without distinction, he said that the unpurified face is named as being, the both unpurified and purified face is named as bodhisattva, and the one who is utterly purified, who is in the utterly purified face, is named as Tathagata. So we're still at the phase that we're very much unpurified, then we're called as beings or sentient beings. And then when we have purified some, but still unpurified, to attain the stainless state, it is called a bodhisattva. And then on the utterly purified face is named Tathagata. It is very similar to this one that we just talked about. In fact, the sentient beings, the ordinary beings, still are fettered by different kind of afflictions, and the bodhisattvas are then on the way out of such fetter. And after achieving the Buddhahood, Buddha is completely unfettered from this all kinds of afflictions. So it talks about how to and where you are in terms of the stages of the fetters of afflictions. So you can then investigate yourself and your own mind. Where are you on this path based on how much afflictions you have? Some of you may feel that, oh, I am a great master. If you are then renowned as great masters, then you should then really investigate and think that how much afflictions do I have? If I have more afflictions than the ordinary beings, then then this is just like that you are naming yourself as a lion when you are no more than a stray dog. If all the afflictions are completely purified in your mind stream, you're probably more closer to the bodhisattvas and the Buddhas. So from this aspect, you should really investigate detailedly to look at your own mind, how much afflictions do you have. So you don't really ask anyone else about if you are a tukku, if you are a bodhisattva, if you are enlightened already or so. You don't need to go to any of the prediction or any of the those fate or dynasty reading places to see who you are. If you want to know who you were in your past life, you can then observe who you are in this lifetime. And if you want to know how you are going to be in your next lifetime, you can then contemplate upon how you are in this lifetime. I think this is really the first kind of teaching that you receive in terms of the distinctions between ordinary beings and bodhisattvas. Some people are called bodhisattvas as a respective title, and they then themselves feel that they're real bodhisattvas. In fact, that is not true. Even if other people call you bodhisattvas, they probably have some secret meanings behind it. Then the next part then talks about the way these three names contain 6 topics. The element are contained in the 6 topics of essence and so on is explained in the light of 3 faces by means of 3 names. Previously, we talked about the meaning of nature and of the essence of cause and fruit and the endowment. Today, we are going to talk about the meaning or the point of entry or manifestation. Through the 6 topics before that through the 6 topics, it is, in fact, I have already included and completely expressed the meaning and the reason of why Buddha nature is completely pure, and how the Buddha nature resides in the impure, in the both impure and pure, and the pure stage. And in these 3 stages or 3 phases, they have 3 names. During the impure stage, that is ordinary being. The both impure and pure phase is bodhisattva, and the completely undefiled and pure stage, that is the Tathagata. From the nature aspect, from its essence aspect, there is no increasing, no decreasing. There's no level or categories that you could then categorize. The Buddha nature, in the clear light of realization, it is said that there is no distinction or differentiation in the Dharmadhatu, and there is no self and other in terms of its essence. But because of the ones who then obtain it, such as the difference between ordinary being, the bodhisattva, and the Tathagata, therefore, I am distinguishing the differences between all this. So the Dharmadhatu, it has no difference. But in terms of the Bodhigala or the beings, then there are differences. According to the previous 6 points, then you'll be able to see that there are the three phases: the pure, both pure and impure, and a completely pure stage. And based on these 3 stages, it got 3 names. Just like water, at first the water was an ice cube, and then you boil it. And once you spoil it, it evaporates. It is all water, but it has 3 different phases. Similar to that, we have the phase of being an ordinary being and being bodhisattva and being Buddha. So that's the 3 phases, and therefore it is quite reasonable. It is then reasonable to differentiate in terms of phases, but not in terms of its essence. So the next one, then it talks about the pervasiveness, just as space, which is by nature free from thought, pervades everything. That is free from any distinction or any kinds of differentiation. Next one, the undefiled expanse, which is the nature of mind, is all-pervading. That's the second aspect. So as a space, it doesn't have any differentiation, doesn't have any thoughts. And the second aspect is that it doesn't then create any obstacles. Not only it doesn't create obstacles, it has a function. So the space doesn't have any thoughts or any kind of differentiation, yet it is undefiled. It doesn't create any kind of obscuration. The space is everywhere, even including our body. We would burp when we don't feel very comfortable with the food that we just had, we can't digest. And the space pervades Australia, pervades Africa. Wherever you can find space, and then there is space. It doesn't have any. It is not then. It does not block anything. It does not then differentiate where everything is, and it chooses to be pervasive or not. And the next one, it talks about the undefiled expanse, which is the nature of mind, is all pervading. So just like that, the Buddha nature could be all pervasive to all sentient beings, the human beings, the hell realm beings, and animals, and even inside animals, the ants and the worms, and all of those have Buddha nature. So Buddha nature is all pervading. In lots of the chantings, it says that Tathagata is all pervasive to all sentient beings. According to the adornment of Mahayana Sutra Shastra, it says that just as space always reaches everywhere, this Dharmadhatu is also all-pervasive at all times. Just as space pervades all forms, so does Dharmadhatu pervades the entire host of sentient beings. Just as how space pervades everywhere, reaches everywhere, in fact, Buddha nature is all-pervasive to all the sentient beings, and all sentient beings possess such Buddha nature. Many people do not really know what Buddha nature is. And because of such ignorance, I think people don't quite understand how and why. Therefore, in the sutra, the Buddha would sometimes give teaching on all the Dharma are empty. And sometimes he would teach then it is not all empty. And he would say that all sentient beings possess Buddha nature. In the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, the Buddha went to Niranjana river with Ananda, and then he asked Ananda to go back and fetch his clean clothing. And then the Buddha started bathing himself, and because of the power of the Buddha, the fish as well as lots of birds, they started to circumambulate the Buddha, which then attracted 500 Brahmins who also gathered around. Once they see the body, the form of the Buddha, they felt really joyful. And then they told the Buddha, saying that if we would love to rely on you, we would then definitely rely on you if you were not a nihilist. And the Buddha said that, how am I a nihilist? And then the Brahmins said that you often give teachings on selflessness, you often talk about no self and selflessness. Then why would then we hold the precepts and practice good for merits and so on? There's no point. And then the Buddha said that, well, that is not true. I also give teachings on the aspect of existence of Buddha nature. And upon hearing this, the 500 Brahmins all then took refuge from the Buddha and aspired for the Anuttara Samya Sambodhi, as well as all the sentient beings around the Buddha, all the animals and so on. And later on, the Buddha started giving them teaching, saying that I sometimes would give teaching on there is a self or existence, but the existence of Buddha nature, but that is not ultimate either. According to Lankavatara Sutra, it says that the unsullied Tathagata is without eternalism and nihilism. It exists inherently within the aggregates, the same as gold in the mine. At first, it is only gold would only be hid in the ore, and only after you extract the gold out of the ore, you'll be able to find the gold. Therefore, we need to practice in order to realize the Buddha nature as well. Just as how there is no gold inside iron, but inside of the gold mine, you'll be able to extract the gold. So that's something that we all need to contemplate upon. It is quite profound. It's within still the same outline. The next one then talks about as the general feature of everything. It embraces those with faults, those with qualities, and those in whom qualities are ultimate, just as space pervades everywhere visible, be it of inferior, average, and supreme appearance. In terms of the essence of Buddha nature, it is all-pervasive. The general feature is not the general characteristic. It doesn't mean that, which is often said in the pramana, in the Buddhist logic texts. Over here, it says that it is then a general feature or true state. It is all pervasive to all phenomena. It is all pervasive to the. It equally permeates to the face of ordinary beings who is beset with faults, and the face of bodhisattvas and noble ones who have qualities, and the face of Tathagata in whom the qualities are ultimate. So all the three faces, in fact, is permeated with Buddha nature. Sometimes it is called the Dharmadhatu, sometimes it's called the Tathagata Garbha. There are many different names to describe Buddha nature. So over here it talks about the space. It says that there are the vessels which are made of clay. The space permeates such vessel, and a vessel that's made of copper that is average, the space would permeate such vessel, same as the golden vessel as well. Sometimes it seems that there are people who have lots of wisdom, who have lots of merit, who have lots of capacity, who has lots of talent, and they're the ones who completely have nothing of those. So there are the ones who are of the lowest class, or who are then of the lowest capacity, and so on. From the manifestations aspect, then it is very different. But in fact, the Buddha nature is the same. In India nowadays, in India there was a classification of different kind of people. There are the people who are of different levels, different classes. Even till nowadays, there are people who are still considered as the lower class. In United States, who recently died, and he said he is the lowest of class in the high classes. And he committed lots of crime. He died in the age of 66 in the prison, and the whole world had lots of condemnations on him. People would feel that there are people who, like him, had no limitation, had no sense of morality. Such kind of low-class people, or such kind of people without morality at all, they are considered as the inferior vessel, just like the clay vessel, but they also have Buddha nature. In fact, people have very different conditions and different causes, and therefore how they live their lives are very different. Such as this morning I met a few people. One of them were very alert, just like some kind of wild animals, like deer and so on. He would then react to any kind of small sound, just like the deers would then watch out while eating and drinking. And through watching the eyes, you would know that he's constantly in the state of being very much alert and cautiousness, and he abides in this kind of fearful state of mind. And I also met someone this morning that he's rather quite slow, and he would just sit there and not really moving much, and he would nod occasionally, just like when I was herding yaks when I was young. The yaks would then just eat, and the yaks would stay in the middle of the road. Even if you hit him with a rock, he would just wag a little bit with the tail and not move a bit. Even if the truck driver would then honk at them, they would still stand up very slowly. So that shows how people are quite very different. Their behavior, their mind, it doesn't matter how they are. They, in fact, all have are all permeated with the Buddha nature. There are people who have a very narrow-mindedness. They would then think of, oh, this is wrong, that is wrong, and they complain and whine a lot. And there are people who have very big-hearted, and they feel comfortable in any kind of situations. So all of those really comes from your previous karma. And it shows that how every sentient being has very different tendencies based on their previous karmas. There are people who are who have the kind of karmic influence from previous life. They can face different obstacles with ease of mind, and there are people who can't. So that's the different kind of vessels we're talking about over here. Whatever kind of person or whoever kind of person, whatever kind of personality you are, or whomsoever you are, you have Buddha nature. That is why the Bodhisattva who never discriminate others according to the Lotus Sutra, he then respects everyone because he views everyone as a future Buddha, because everyone has Buddha nature. So over here it talks about the explanation of the different types in general. And then the seventh one, it talks about the unchangingness. That's concise explanation of the essence. So we're going to talk about the concise aspect, having faults that are adventitious and qualities that are its nature. It is afterwards the same as before. This is dharmata, average, unchanging. In the previous one, it seems that so as ordinary being, we begin with faults, and then through practice, and then we become purified and then attain Buddhahood. And then over here, the question is, well, then it seems that you're talking about the Buddha nature would change gradually through different phases, isn't it? Does it have such faults? No, it doesn't, because over here it talks about the space when it's covered by clouds. Does the space change when it's covered? And does the space change when the clouds disperse? No, it doesn't, because the faults that the mundane beings have, they are adventitious. They are very temporary. They're just like the guests. They would come to you, and then very quickly they would then leave and depart because they're guests. That is what adventitious means. And the Buddha nature is like the owner. When the Buddha asked the disciple what is adventitious thing, and then upon contemplating on this, he attained realization. And the qualities, in fact, the qualities of the Buddha, the four fearlessness and the 10 powers and so on, these are already then possessed by the sentient beings at the stage of being the mundane beings. So it has never really changed. That's the nature of Buddha nature of Tathagata. That is changeless. According to Lankavatara Sutra, it then stated that when the dirt in the cloth is washed away, or the pure gold is refined out of minerals, both the cloth and gold are not damaged. It is the same to purify our mind from defilement. The clothing is not dirty because the dirt can be washed away. But the clothing, after washing, it doesn't change. When it is dirty and when it's washed, the clothing itself doesn't change, it's the dirt that is removed. So what it means is that the Buddha nature is the essence, it is changeless, it's the nature, it won't be destroyed or obstructed. According to, in praise of Dharmadhatu, it says that likewise mind that is so luminous is soiled by the stains of craving and so forth. The afflictions burn in wisdom's fire, but its luminosity does not. Previously, we talked about the metaphors of fire. What it means is that the mind of desire, the mind of ignorance, the mind of anger, all of these adventitious stains temporarily covers this luminous mind that we have. But through the practice, the fire, the flame of wisdom will then burn out the afflictions. But it doesn't mean that the burning and the afflictions are the essence, are the nature of Buddha nature. Those are all adventitious. So we should know that the true state of Buddha nature had never changed. Many masters love using love quoting this stanza, this verse. In Mahāti, it talks about to recognize the nature of your mind. In fact, such nature of your mind was like so and will be like so and is like so. It is suchness. For example, before you didn't recognize the nature of your mind, and then through the pointing out the instructions, you recognize the nature of your mind. From the point of the nature of mind, it has never changed. It's the matter of recognizing it or not. Just like a child a prince that wandered away from the palace and got lost. And then later he was found by the king. The prince had never changed in terms of his status. He is the heir to the king, being lost or not. So now people feel that is there a change when we talk about a sense of transformation and path? In fact, that is not true. The nature of such qualities, the nature of Buddha, of Tathagata had never really changed. Many great masters in different sutras and shastras and commentaries, they constantly quote this stanza. When I was young, I quote this very often in debates. Previously, when I was young, there was only about a few dozen of people debating, and nowadays there are hundreds of people who love debating. And now I really don't want to go there because I'm quite afraid of they would debate with me and they would then clap and then they would run to me and started clapping their hands and initiating a debate. So previously and later, the nature does not change. So we'll stop here today.